These are some ravens that were stalking us and other lunch goers at the picnic benches near the Old Faithful parking lot. They seem to be very intelligent birds, as is often said, and these ones look sort of old, they look a little bit haggard, and I have no doubt they could still make a living foraging for themselves and scavenging in the forest, but they've chosen to set up shop here and look for humans to feed them. So I think this one has understood that I, if not in the presence of company, would probably be more likely than other people to feed birds, but you're not supposed to feed wild birds in Yellowstone. The way I see it is you have two options for lunch. You can either bring your own lunch or you can buy a lunch at one of the lodges nearby. They have many of these large lodges next to the major tourist attractions, which always come with huge parking lots, and said parking lots always have picnic tables next to them, so families and groups of friends can bring and eat their lunches there. So both have their merits. I would say just spend the least amount of time eating as possible and not to dilly-dally and keep chatting away. This is assuming you have the energy to do what I'd like to do, which is to walk around all day during the daylight hours, and this is more far in the north than San Diego, where I come from and live. So there's a lot more hours of daylight. It's still bright at 8:30 at night, and the sky is bright, basically at maybe 6:30 in the morning. In San Diego, it's just not as bright in the hills and mountains. The shadows get really long really quickly, long before you approach sunset. So it's completely different than, say, Big Sky Country in Montana. And that's a huge difference. So when you're here, you're going to be amazed if you come from a place where there's a lot less light and a lot less duration of it. And you're going to want to spend as much time exploring as possible. But this is all high elevation caldera, 6,500 feet to 8,500 feet. That's 2,000 plus meters in elevation. You're going to sunburn a lot more easily because the elevation is high. I would suggest slathering very strong SPF suntan lotion all over yourself, all the exposed areas, every few hours, maybe 2 to 3 hours, and also apply chapstick with SPF 30. I got my lips sunburned here on the second day, and it took a few days to recover from that. Not a pleasant experience. And also, you're going to get winded a lot quicker because the elevation is higher. And that applies to everyone. So you might not have the stamina and endurance that you thought you had at lower elevations, depending on where you came from. So a lot of these other geysers are actually more interesting in appearance than Old Faithful is. And Old Faithful is just simply the one that erupts every 91 minutes, give or take 10 minutes. And thus it's the most famous one because it gives you something to see on a schedule. But many of these other irregular ones have fantastic mineral deposit formations, and these are just the ones near Old Faithful. In fact, I saw many other more beautiful things and stranger things later on in my trip. So it's definitely not a case of, okay, I've seen a few geysers, we've seen them all, let's move on and look for animals or something else. That's not the case at all. You won't cease to be amazed by what's out there in Yellowstone National Park. So definitely reserve time to, go around all of the geysers and all of the basins to check all of them out. With regards to trip planning, it's kind of a daunting task to go to something that's so far away for so many people. But I would recommend, if you live within a 1,000-mile radius of Yellowstone National Park, that you just take a few days off, hopefully 5 days, a whole work week and 2 weekends together. So you have 9 days, and just drive over and maybe book some cheap motels or something on the outer perimeter. There are also many log cabins that you can book. I think those actually are a little bit more pricey, but they can house more people than your standard motel or hotel room. So it's all about your preference. I would suggest just driving over, because every time I've done the calculations for a trip in the western United States, it always seems like I would have saved way more money just driving over and maybe had a better time